Thanks again for everyone joining us today. I'm Shannon Holt, a Rural Development Officer from WA, and I'm going to be the host for today's webinar, which is all about what comes next. So we're going to touch on how Varroa is impacting pollination in Australia currently, and how this may also be different to what was expected. So we're really excited to have 5 fantastic speakers joining us from lots of different areas today. We have Rebecca Sloan from the National Varroa Mite Management Program, Tracy Armstrong from Mite Foundation, can everyone make sure their microphone is muted, please? Sorry, just had a pile join a bit late. So just running through our speakers, we have Rebecca Sloan from the National Varroa Mite Management Program, Tracy Armstrong from Mite Foundation, Ian Cover from Apple and Pear Australia Limited, Rex Caruthers, a commercial beekeeper from Queensland, will be joining, and Ashley Schott from Beejo Seeds Australia. And can we go to the next slide, please, Joe? So presentations are going to go for about 40 minutes, and at the end there will be up to 20 minutes for question time. So please add your questions to the chat as they come. They may be answered during the presentations or addressed at the end in the question time. You're also going to have the opportunity to ask questions yourself by unmuting your microphone and raising your hand first. So please wait for the floor to be given to you before you unmute your microphone. And as we've just had a few examples from people just joining, please make sure your microphone is muted during the presentations. And a quick reminder that the webinar is recorded today and it's going to be available on the National Varroa Mite Management website or the Varroa Management T2M YouTube series. So first up, we have Rebecca Sloan, the National Pollination Industry Coordinator from the Varroa Mite Management Program. So she's got extensive experience in both.
Yep, no worries, okay.
Sorry, just making sure someone wasn't trying to stop me. All right, so Beck's got extensive experience in both the horticulture industry and beekeeping and offers valuable insight into how these industries can work together to succeed. Today, she's going to talk about her current findings and what resources are available to pollination and beekeeping industries. I will hand over to you, Beck.
Thanks, Shannon. I'm having some technical difficulties here, so sorry if I drop out or anything like that. I've had to shift locations and everything, so hopefully it doesn't drop out on me again. All right, so with my first slide here, all the work that I've achieved over the last 12 months has been completed and is sitting up on our Varroa Mite Management website. And we have fact sheets as well as the generic pollination guide, which can all be downloaded and printed to be used within your pollination business. Alongside the pollination guide, we have developed two quick reference guides, which have been designed to be the go-to documents that can be used on your farm without having to go through the whole big document of the pollination guide, which ended up being around 30 pages long. So the go-to...
No, they are not.
Someone hasn't muted their mic. Are we good?
Beck, I think we've got you muted now. Can you unmute?
Yeah.
Yep. I'm unmuted again.
Great. Yep.
Cool. Awesome. Now I'm not sure where I got up to when all of that went awry.
You were just talking about the pollination guide.
Cool. All right. So alongside the pollination guide, there is the quick reference guide on honeybee management. And the aim of that guide is to be able to aid the farmer or grower in providing a safe environment for their honeybees during their pollination while those bees are on farm, and some of the year-round things that you can do to help provide a better environment for honeybees to complete the pollination. This guide is only a guide, and so it is very generic, and so you will need to be able to adapt the requirements to suit your particular farm at the time and your operation. Then the other quick guide is the Quick Spray Reference Guide, which has been developed as a document for anyone who's involved in the application of horticultural sprays on your property to help minimise the impacts to pollination and the health of the bees while they're around, and also to the broader community of the alternate pollinators that may be available on your property. The fact sheets that are available are the European Honey Guides and how our actions impact successful pollination, beekeeping tips for best pollination outcomes, and there will be very soon, it's in its final draft stages now, a pollination and pollinator-friendly plantings. So these ones are just extra bits of information to help you understand and have a successful pollination once Varroa becomes established within your growing region. And then the big document, which we have sitting there on the slide, is the pollination guide. And this one is just a very generic guide. It is very broad sweeping with its information, but its aim was to help you negotiate pollination agreements, contributing to bee health, managing and care of bees while they're completing your pollination, and how to manage the use of horticultural sprays while they're on your property. The guide is downloadable in its form now, but we were also hoping that each of the industry bodies out there that use pollination would adapt this guide to be industry specific. So it would more like the Almonds and the Berries Australia pollination guides, where they've taken all that broad sweeping information and they've turned it into a industry specific one. So there'll be extra tidbits that relate only to your industry. So currently all this information is live on the National Varroa Mite Management website until December 26 is what I've been told. Post that time, we're not sure where that will live. So my suggestion will be to start creating your own pollination library, either within your own industry or within your own business, so that you have access to these documents when you need them once Varroa hits your area and starts to impact your pollination. Next slide, please. All right, so how Varroa will impact you directly is still not fully understood. So we do know to date there has been mixed outcomes in the original area where Varroa was detected. We've had some growers that have reported absolute flops and they're blaming Varroa. And we've had other growers that have had absolute fantastic yields. So, and they're all in the Sydney Basin where wild populations have been eradicated as part of the response. So there had to have been other factors at play. But we do know that the wild populations or feral populations, depending on your terminology, won't be a viable pollination option once Varroa enters your growing region and becomes established. There's a university in Sydney that monitored their wild populations for years and years and years and years. And once Varroa established there, they went from a large number of feral populations down to one hive, and that hive wasn't deemed to be in a condition that would actually succeed in pollination if it was to go out and pollinate. So it's not something that you can rely on moving forward. So therefore, preparation now with some of the options to help you achieve your pollination is what you need to be looking at, and how pollination will look on your farm once Varroa has established will and potentially be very different to your next door neighbours. There on the slide there are some options around how you may choose to go about your pollination. Each of them have their pros and cons. So things like using your commercial bee broker, which will be the most common form used for pollination. Almonds use commercial bee brokers, apples and pears often use commercial bee brokers, so on and so forth. Often when you're chasing large numbers of hives, and it just takes the pressure off the grower for needing to source hives if they can contact one person and it's all sorted out. Then there is also the option for direct appointment of a beekeeper. So recreational or commercial can fall into this category. In my local growing region, which is in the Goulburn Valley in the northern Victoria, a lot of the smaller apple and pear orchards are using, and I'm stealing some of Ian's thunder from his presentation, sorry, recreational beekeepers, because they only need half a dozen hives, so that works well for them, and they're able to develop a strong relationship, so they are working together to achieve best outcomes there. Then, of course, there are alternate pollinators. Tropical regions have more options here. Some of our native bees in the tropical regions are managed in hives, so you can actually utilise more than just the solitary bees that are unfortunately all that's available in our temperate zones. We do have options available too, so not just bees as pollinators. There's a bit of work going on with hoverflies, and we've got some to talk about that a bit later too. So there are other things out there that you can do to supplement your European honeybee pollinators. European honeybees are still going to be our most profitable option for pollination, so we need to look to fill those gaps from where the feral colonies used to top up on the hives that were being used. We also then have things like mechanical pollination. That's a really expensive thing. It's labour intensive, so it's usually just sits with those high yielding protected cropping types where all other variables are removed, so you know it's going to happen as you want it to do. But there has been a lot of work in this sector, so watch that space. There is also then the option, of course, of owning your own hives. That comes at the cost of managing hives, staff to look after those hives. What do you do with those hives when you finish with your pollination? On the flip side of that, you can then use those hives to service other growers if their pollination doesn't coincide with yours. So they can become an income source as well. So things that you also need to think about when you're starting to employ the services of a contractor of some description, be it commercial, broker, recreational beekeeper, is the timing of your crops. Does it coincide with a major pollination event? So our biggest one is the almonds. Most commercial beekeepers aim to head to the almonds because it's a guaranteed income source for them. So that will limit the availability of commercial hives potentially in your growing regions move forward. So I'd be starting to seek out local beekeeping associations and talking to them about what your options will be moving forward in the way of recreational or commercial beekeepers. So you're fully aware of your availability, costings and things like that when you need to start relying on those options. Next slide, please. Cool. All right, so what I don't know and moving forward, sorry. So as part of the T2M, we do know around 8,000 beekeepers have participated in our training programs and discussions with the Varroa development officers. There's also been other training activities as part of the program to continue to implement and aid beekeepers and pollinators alike, things like queen bee breeding programs and stuff like that. We're also updating Varroa management guides. The beekeeping code of practice and biosecurity manual are both in their final stages of being updated to reflect the current beekeeping practices. Some of the states are also doing extra activities to help with the management slowing the spread of Varroa, so it takes longer to actually affect some of those extra regions. They're also running upskilling activities, some such as teaching agronomists on things to look out for chemically harmful to beekeepers, so that there is options out there and understood on how everyone can work together to help maximise people's pollination success. We can also start looking to the other countries. Everyone else has been living with Varroa for different lengths of time. There is things to think about when you're collecting information from your overseas counterparts, though. Our climate is different and our floral options are also different. So that may have impacts on how you can manage those hives when you're collecting information from overseas. Things to just think about when you're starting to prepare yourself for when Varroa hits your area and things that you may need to take into consideration. That's it for me. Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks, Beck. It's great to know what resources are available and just what to start thinking about in preparation. So next we have Tracy Armstrong, the Program Manager for the Australian Pollination Strategy at Wing Bee Foundation. With 20 years experience in sustainability and tertiary sectors, she specialises in policy and strategy development. Today, Tracy is going to explain what the Wing Bee Foundation does and its current work on the Australian pollination strategy. Over to you, Tracy.
Thank you, Shannon. Good afternoon, everybody. As mentioned, I'm Tracy Armstrong, and I'm the Program Manager for the development of the Australian Pollination Strategy at the Ween Bee Foundation. Today, I'll be introducing the Australian Pollination Strategy, explain its purpose, and highlight how it will continue some of the important work started by the T2M program. Next slide, please. So pollination, as we know, not saying anything you don't know, is the backbone of our agricultural and natural ecosystems, and it's vital for food production, biodiversity, and the livelihoods of many Australians. However, as we're hearing, pollination services face increasing threats, not only from pests like Varroa, but other compounding effects like habitat loss, climate change, and improper pesticide use. Next slide, please. Many of you may know who the Ween Bee Foundation is, but for those who are unfamiliar with us, we're an independent registered Australian charity dedicated to bee welfare. The foundation promotes awareness of the importance of bees for food security, biodiversity, and ecosystem health, and raises funds for research that addresses the national and global threats to bees. We engage with all levels of government, the apiculture industry, pollination-reliant food industries, universities, research organisations, citizen scientists, and the larger community. We fund vital strategic research, education, and conservation initiatives that strengthen bees, improve pollination efficacy, and increase food security and ecosystem health. Next slide, please. So the development of the Australian Pollination Strategy is a $2.64 million collaborative project led by the Ween Bee Foundation. The logos you see on the screen represent the key partner organisations who are supporting and contributing to this national effort. Together, they bring expertise from across pollination services, agriculture, research, natural resource management, and policy. This collective approach is essential. Pollination underpins multiple sectors, and ensuring its security requires input from all corners of the system. Next slide, please. So the Australian Pollination Strategy is a national effort to ensure that pollination remains resilient and sustainable into the future. While European honeybees are often in the spotlight for their essential roles in agriculture, the strategy is equally committed to supporting our native bees and the wide variety of wild pollinators that contribute to healthy ecosystems and crop yields. So the Australian Pollination Strategy aims to secure pollination by safeguarding services for both crops and natural ecosystems, recognising that native bees and other wild pollinators play unique and irreplaceable roles, especially in native bushland and for certain crops where honeybees may not be as effective. Support all pollinators, go beyond managed hives by promoting the health and diversity of all pollinators, including the hundreds of native bee species and other insects only found in Australia. Tackle the major challenges, habitat loss, pesticide exposure, climate change, and pests that impact both managed honeybees and native pollinators, and drive research to better understand the native bee populations, their pollination services, and how best to protect both managed and wild pollinators, and encourage land management that benefits all pollinators, such as planting native vegetation, reducing chemical risk, and protecting nesting and foraging sites. Including floral resources that managed bees will need when they're not pollinating particular crops, or even while they are as well. And also to advocate for policy, to push for policies and investment that supports the health and diversity of all pollinators for the long term. For everyone passionate about pollinators, whether you work with honeybees, native bees, or other wild pollinators, your expertise and local knowledge are vital in shaping the strategies, priorities, and actions. So together we can ensure that all of Australia's pollinators are valued, protected, and celebrated as a cornerstone of our agricultural and environmental future. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the Australian Pollination Strategy will build on the T2M project work in several ways. We'll maintain and expand stakeholder engagement, continue supporting research, and seek to find ways to address gaps identified by the VMMP, such as long-term monitoring and inclusion of native pollinators. Importantly, we'll continue to work to strengthen collaboration across all sectors. Next slide, please. Thanks. So the Australian Pollination Strategy is about long-term preparedness and resilience. We'll help ensure Australia is ready for future biosecurity threats, integrate pollination into broader agricultural and environmental policy, and support all pollinators. We'll also encourage innovation and best practice in pollination management, It's important to clarify that the Australian Pollination Strategy will not duplicate the technical or operational work of the T2M program. The Australian Pollination Strategy, or APS, I'll just refer to it that, is focused on strategy, coordination, and long-term resilience. Next slide, please. So here's what you can expect over the next few years. The strategy implementation is carefully phased to ensure broader input and practical outcomes that build on each other. We're currently in phase 1, which runs to the end of this year. This is the foundation building phase, focused on stakeholder engagement and consultation. This is why your input is so valuable. This is when we're actively shaping the strategy's direction based on identified needs and priorities. Phase 1 also incorporates the development of the Pollination Security Status Report, which is underway to understand exactly where we are now and what needs to be addressed. We're simultaneously developing the policy frameworks that will guide implementation. Phase 2 next year is when we'll be developing the larger Australian pollination strategy, and we'll need your help then again to ensure what we're designing is fit for purpose, yours and the other sectors that need to be involved. And phase 3 from 2027 to 2029 focuses on national program rollout, impact assessment, and strategy refinement based on what we've learned. Throughout all phases, there's ongoing evaluation and adaptation. This isn't a rigid plan. It's a flexible framework that evolves based on results and changing circumstances. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, one of the key pieces underpinning the strategy will be the Pollination Security Status Report, which we're just getting underway now. Through careful review of available information corroborated through stakeholder engagement, the status report will, for the first time, provide summaries on the current state of pollination security in Australia. It will not only provide a snapshot of pollinators and pollination services as they relate to the requirements of horticulture and ecosystems, but also importantly consider the issues that will affect the relationship and the probability of these outcomes. So the status report will also, through a series of scenarios developed based on possible or likely developments, identify issues that will affect pollination-dependent industries, both on the supply and demand side. And it's not just about identifying problems, it's about providing the foundation for a roadmap to secure pollination into the future. We'll be developing a future recommendations report template for regular future assessments as well. So this doesn't end up being a once-off report that sits on a shelf, but something that can be adapted and used for the future. It will help to identify what data we have and what we'll need to ensure a secure pollination future for the country. Next slide, please. And the Australian Pollination Strategy needs input from those who know pollination best: beekeepers, growers, and policymakers. Beekeepers' on-the-ground experience is vital for shaping practical, effective solutions for pollinator health and biosecurity. Growers' insights ensure the strategy addresses real crop needs and supports productive pollinator-friendly farming. And government officials help align the strategy with broader agricultural and environmental goals, ensuring it has real impact. Your engagement helps us identify gaps, set priorities, and design actions that will work in the real world. By working together, we can build a strategy that protects both managed and native pollinators, supports industry, and strengthens Australia's security. By engaging with us, you'll help us identify these gaps and set priorities. So it's essential that your voice is heard. Next slide, please. And I'm nearly at the end, as you'll probably all be happy. So to make it easy, there are 2 QR codes up on the screen. The first lets you sign up for monthly updates so you can stay in the loop as things progress. And the second takes you to a Have Your Say portal where you can contribute ideas.
Being recorded, so we can get it now.
Yeah, that's fine. Contribute ideas or flag priorities for your region or industry. We'd love you to scan one or both and be part of the conversation. And you can also find out what events we'll be at or how to take part in any public consultations by visiting the Australian Pollination Strategy website on the Where to Find Us page. And that's it from me. And thank you very much for your attention today.
Thanks, Tracy. Just a reminder, everyone, to feel free to put questions in the chat as we go. Next, we have Ian Cover from Apple and Pear Australia Limited, where he's the Industry Services Manager for Biosecurity and Extension. Ian's role is to represent APAL on biosecurity committees and reference groups, as well as developing and implementing personalised orchard biosecurity plans for growers. Ian will show us APAL's current growing regions and issues they're already seeing that are arising in New South Wales, Victoria and Queensland. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you very much, Shannon. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to, I guess, give an industry perspective. from our current, I guess, dealings with Varroa mite. As Rebecca's sort of mentioned in her presentation, the impact hasn't, I think, fully been known within the apple and pear industry. So at this stage, we're just in a stage where we're preparing for the arrival of the pest in the major growing regions. Next slide, please, Joe. Oh, is there one going back? That's the third one. Oh, it's missing a slide there. I'm not sure what's going on. Basically, that's all right. I'll go from there. But I've just got a quick one for everyone. But I'll start with an industry snapshot. We have over 400 apple and pear growers across the country, grown in each state. Obviously not in the Northern Territory though. And we're with 40% of the production mainly being out of Victoria. 90% of all Australia's pears are actually grown in Victoria as well, with between 10 and 15% of all other pome fruit production mixed across the other states. I did have a slide which had a photo of our current sort of modern orchard setups, but maybe you can sort of see in the background there, one of the major features we're looking at with our modern orchards is overhead protective structures, mainly for hail. But this creates a bit of a changing pollination environment. And obviously makes it difficult when it comes time for spring and pollination events. So typically we're moving to a high density, narrow rows in our orchards to maximize production. But that's obviously causing other challenges with pollination. It's creating quite a dense fruiting wall of canopy structure where bees actually find it hard to navigate if they cannot see the sun when they have overhead protection covering. So pollination is becoming more of a, I guess, a science rather than where it was in the past where it was just stick a hive per acre and pollination was generally occurred. As we're creating these higher productivity orchard and more challenging pollination environments, we're having to look at pollination a lot more closely because it's one of our most important events. We can always take fruit off later, but when it comes to setting that initial fruit count of what we have, we've only got about a week to do it for all of our varieties. And just speaking of that, all of our commercial varieties are reliant on cross pollination. So we do rely heavily on beekeepers to actually provide that service, because in terms of native pollinators, there's only about 5% of 5 to 10% of other pollinators visiting the flowers during that period, which is between September and October, depending on the region. As for this slide, it shows a bit of a breakdown of our growing regions. As you can see, they're very highly clustered around Victoria, and next to the picture of Australia there, we've got a heat map where I've just taken all three. I noticed that Chris is asking about a combined heat map. Chris, that's a good question. There wasn't a combined one. I actually took the standardized map from all three of the Varroa impacted states from the government websites there, and I just superimposed them over each other. It's a bit tricky, but everything you can see there in blue is the, I guess, the negative detections where beekeepers have been conducting and government monitoring staff have been taking recordings for the last 16 weeks, and anything there in orange is where they are positive detection. So obviously the darker the colour, the higher the density of detections. So as you can see there, quite a high density along New South Wales on the east coast there, but it's also moving up into Brisbane, where it's actually it's already at our Queensland Stanthorpe growing region. So the growers there will likely start seeing the impacts this season, I expect. And in Victoria, it's been a bit slower, but you can't really see the oranges because they're covered by the black dots, but the black dots is where they're actually having the positives there. So we're starting to see, especially that Shepparton region, where Varroa mite will be probably seen within 2 years' time. Growers will start noting it. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to finish off with what are the challenges we're seeing from our industry, as well as our advice to our stakeholders. As Beck alluded to, the native populations are disappearing, and I think in the past, a lot of our growers have got away with having wild honeybees, because as you can see in the picture behind me, quite a lot of our blocks have actual native bushland around them, maybe within a kilometre of the orchards. So there's a good chance that actually there was supplementary pollination from wild bees. And we've really got to look at what the impact is, especially in Batlow and Bilpin regions where, you know, Varroa has decimated those native populations. So we're expecting to maybe hear from growers this year about that. There's going to be increased competition on available pollination services. Potentially the quality of the hives may be decreasing, so growers will have to look at increasing their hive numbers per hectare. So going from that 2 to 4 hives per hectare, and going on the upper end of that scale, going at four hives a hectare, which is obviously an increased cost, and the hives might not be available. Yeah, that's about it. And then in terms of our advice to growers, it's echoing what Rebecca said. It's be in touch early with your beekeepers, create that close relationship, because where I've seen the best outcome is where small to medium growers are working with their hobby beekeepers in a sense, because they don't need a huge amount of hives, and obviously they can have that close-knit relationship. They can talk about their pesticide application over that spring period, manage the hive movements to get the best outcome for both of them. And I mean, it's roughly, for the hobby beekeepers, it's probably a lot of income actually comes from pollination services they provide to industry as well. Yeah, and in terms of owning your own hives, that's probably not going to be something a lot of our growers will do. I won't say it's not going to be there, but yeah, most of our growers recognise that it is a specialist service. It is a specialist skill set that comes with moving, taking care of hives, taking care of them over the winter, moving them around the orchard, placing them in the orchard, looking after them. So most of the time they're going to rely on a pollination service provider. And potentially this year is where our larger farms will be looking at the bee brokers to actually look at organising their needs. And I've just got a little photo there from one of Ashley's colleagues, Hannah Allwright, about hoverflies in a carrot seed crop there. But our industry is investing heavily into alternate pollinators. We know that we're not going to be going away from honeybees, but we do recognise the fact that we will need to supplement what we have if we don't want to increase our hive density, or we may not have the capacity to increase our pollination capacity for the season. And I think that's it from me there, Joe. The last slide's just contact information, and I'll answer there's a couple of questions come in the chat, and I'll answer that as I go. Thank you very much, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Ian. So next we have Rex Caruthers. He's a commercial beekeeper from Queensland, and he's been actively involved in the beekeeping industry associations and committees. Rex manages around 2,000 hives, with his business focused solely on pollination. So he's going to share a case study with us today on lucerne seed production. This is pre-recorded, as today Rex is actually busy prepping his bees for almond pollination. Still feel free though to send some questions in, and if the panel can't answer them, we'll pass them on to Rex and get back to you.
Right. My name is Rex Caruthers. I'm a commercial beekeeper from the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, and for the last 23 years I've really focused on almond pollination as my main source of income. So I run my entire outfit focused around hives to go to almond pollination, and how to make that journey a profitable one for me, as well as for the almond industry that we service. I consistently work a farm in central West New South Wales, and they are big lucerne growers and do lucerne seed as well. And for the last 20 years, excluding the last 3, since Mite was detected, I've been on that farm, and their lucerne seed pollination has been very, very good, and their yields have been brilliant. But once the bees that I take were no longer there, and because of a few hard seasons in a row, the feral colonies ceased to exist as well. So we, in the area where this farm is, become fairly light on any bee pollination at all. Because the seasons were not good, commercial beekeepers here from New South were not in the district, and for 2 consecutive years, their lucerne seed yield was 0. So that was very disappointing. But this last year, I did leave some bees there, and all of a sudden, they have a yield of their 400 acres that was set aside for lucerne seed production at a yield of 40 tonnes. So massive increase. And I wouldn't be so cheeky as to say that it was all to do with bees. It's a culmination of a better season, a very ideal flowering time with no interruptions from weather, and of course we had plenty of hives on the 2 paddocks to try and get them some seed, which worked brilliantly well. So the scenario that we saw this year on this farm was that because of seasonal conditions, feral bees ceased to exist, and we are going to see that same scenario play out with mites. The mites are going to make sure there's no feral colonies left in the environment, or very few, and I would suggest that the ones that are left would not be of any quality to do any pollination, or very limited pollination. So we see here that the future for horticulture and agriculture is going to very much depend on managed bees. So it's an important thing, and really highlight this scenario that's just played out has highlighted to me that we've got a lot of work to do to increase our hive numbers, or to maintain our hive numbers as best we can, so that these pollination dependent crops and industries can survive alongside us. So it's going to be an interesting few years. I think it's all achievable, and I think we all need to work together and collaborate as close as we can to try and come out with the best outcomes for everyone concerned, so that all our industries remain viable and into the future. So thank you for that, and that's about the end of my presentation. So thank you, and all the best.
Back to you, Shannon.
Thanks, Jo. Sorry for the delay. Now, to top it off, my camera is not working. Okay. So I'll just quickly introduce Ashley. So Ashley Schott is our last presenter of the day. She's the research manager at BJO Seeds Australia, where she conducts large practical research trials. And today she's going to share her recent research on hoverflies and their complementary pollination behaviour with honeybees. Hand over to Ashley, thanks.
Thank you, Shannon, and hello, everyone. Firstly, I'll apologise if there are any noises going on in the background. We've got a fair bit of activity happening on site, but we shall do our best. So today, I just wanted to give you guys an overview on the Hoverfly project. So this is a project which Hort Innovation Australia, or HIA, got started back in 2018 with the primary goal to try and identify and provide an additional pollinator to the horticultural industry throughout Australia. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, as you are all very aware, pollination is essential for many of the crops that we grow here in Australia. And of course, we do have our European honeybee, which in most cases is the only managed pollinator that we have available. Of course, there are gaps that have been identified when it comes to relying on a single pollinator, for example, in protected cropping and in cool season pollination. And as we are very aware of at the moment, there is, of course, a risk when it comes to relying on the one pollinator. So because of these gaps and the risks identified, Hort Innovation started the Managing Flies for Crop Pollination project back in 2018, and that's run through until 2025, so finishing up earlier this year. The primary goals for that project, for the first stage, was around trying to identify promising candidates for other pollinators within our industries, looking at whether they were efficient pollinators. If so, developing the basic rearing protocols in order to rear larger numbers, and doing an initial cost-benefit analysis on the commercial viability for those as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I would not go through this slide in detail, but this is here to try and give you a bit of an overview or an understanding on how much work has gone into this project. It's got the various research providers on the left-hand side. So it includes Seed Purity, UNE, DePerd, and the Western Sydney University as well. We've looked at multiple different flies for their possible pollination behaviour in various crop types, and have had various results come out of those. So if you want to, feel free to refer back to this slide when the recording comes out. Next slide, please. So for us in the vegetable seed industry, which is the industry that I'm a part of, we have decided to move forward with the Eristalis tenax, or the fly that we refer to as the hoverfly. For us, Eristalis tenax is widely available or abundant in Australia naturally, which is seen on the image on the right-hand side in the blue. They are an obligate pollen and nectar feeder. So they feed purely on flowers, and we don't have any of the issues with sheep strike like you might see in blowflies. They work quite a wide range of crops, so not only our vegetable seed crops, but also cherries, berries, and other crop types as well. They're hairy, so they're very good pollinators. Their pollination efficiency is comparable to honeybees, which is a really important thing for us. And the other piece, which is really, really nice about this species, is that they're very complementary to honeybees. So, for example, they tend to work in cooler temperatures, and they tend to work earlier in the day as well. Now, this is really important for us because we will always want honeybees pollinating our crops, but to add this additional pollinator for them working at a different time of the day, it means we're getting more pollination throughout the season. And by working in cooler temperatures, we're getting more pollination over varying conditions throughout that season as well. Next slide, please. And next one again. So these graphs here, well, very briefly, if you do want to refer back to these, just give an indication on the different temperatures that the species will work at and how they then work together. Next slide, please. So where are we at with this project at the moment? Currently, we've selected the Eristalis tenax as the species of hoverfly that we'd like to move forward with. We have developed and established the rearing protocols needed for this species. We have completed crop efficiency studies across the carrot and other vegetable seed industries. Work is ongoing in the berries, cherries, and moving forward in the avocados as well, and other crop types, which I'll mention soon. So moving forward with this project, Hort Innovation Australia will be starting the second stage. That'll take us from this year, so 2025 into 2030. The ultimate goal after the next 5 years is to have this species available to Australian industries at a commercial level. So having this available for anyone who wishes to use this in their system as well. So in order to do this, there's a couple of core aims as part of this project. The first one will be looking at the risk potential associated with releasing these into our current ecosystems, if there is one. and looking at any possible mitigation strategies that we might need to as well. It'll also be looking at developing this species for further crop types under protected cropping systems and in more open field systems as well. And primarily it will be looking at supporting the commercial rearing capacity so that we can have it readily available for Australian industries. And finally, making sure that we have a commercialisation pathway available too. Next slide. Thank you. So far, moving forward into this next stage of the project, we have the avocado industries involved, apples and pears, as Ian was talking about earlier, cherries, and the vegetable seed industries. On the right-hand side are all the partners that will be going with us moving forward. Now, if you are from an industry and it's not on this list and you would like to be on this list, there's still the possibility to be involved and to start looking at this as an additional pollinator to your system. If you're interested, please contact Seed Purity as they'll be the lead researcher on this project. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Ashley. That's the end of all our formal presentations. We are running a bit over, apologies for some of the technical issues, but we still have time for questions. Just have a look. So there's none in the chat, but you can raise your hand if you want to ask a question. On the bottom of your screen, if you click your reaction, and you can raise hand, as I've just done. So please feel free to ask a question in person. Ian, I see you've got your hand raised. Over to you.
Thanks, Shannon. Question for Ashley. With the hoverflies, have they been doing well in these environments where they have a limited, I guess, floral diversity? I'm just thinking about an apple orchard where we, spray under the trees, keep that mound barren. There's relatively few, different weed species in the actual inter-row space. Have they been doing well under that condition?
Yes, for sure. So the primary area that we've been looking at them is in a carrot seed crop, anywhere from 5 hectares right up to 15 hectares. And unfortunately, we are also rather barren as well, in that for us, it really is just carrot flowers there for them. And we do find that they work quite well. So they're quite happy to disperse throughout the crop, to work primarily on the carrots themselves. Of course, we do get a little bit of bleed out on the edge, but so far we have been quite happy with how well they stay in our crops.
Perfect. Thank you. Looking forward to those trials in apples.
So we're looking forward to it as well.
Thanks, Ashley. There's also in the chat, someone's just asked, Ashley, if you could provide the contact details for Seed Purity.
Yes, I will pop that in the chat for you once I figure out how to do that quickly, but I'll do that in the background.
Thank you. Yeah, no worries. I don't think we have any more questions coming in. Some more information has been provided in some of the questions back in the chat if you're interested in the map. No one's raising their hand. So still feel free to ask questions. They might come to you later. And maybe we can get Joe to put an email address in the chat for us that people can just email it to if something comes to them later. Got another question for Ashley. What supplements assist the hoverfly survival?
Ooh, that is a very good question. So primarily the hoverflies, they require pollen and nectar to survive, and they do survive quite well when they do have those resources. So long as there is a flowering crop type there for them to feed on, they will be quite happy. Now, I will say that they are quite sensitive when it comes to insecticides and other possible sprays as well. So during pollination, the best advice is to, as much as possible, minimize your spraying. Make sure that they've got flowering plants there available for them. And the females like to lay somewhere where there's water close by. So if you really wanted to, you could try and have a ditch or a drain or something like that, and that might help keep the females on site. But in general, we find that they do stay quite well. So long as you've got the flowers and you're not spraying them out with chemicals, then they're pretty good at staying around.
Yeah, so similar with the honeybees. A follow-up question, does sugar liquid assist them?
Sugar,
Sugar syrup?
we will be looking at it, alternative supplements for their feeding, but so far we've found that nothing really beats nectar or honey. Honey, they do love honey as well, just because it does provide so many extra little bits and pieces. They can survive for a little bit on sugar syrup, but nectar and honey is your ultimate food source for them.
Okay, so you're not going to rely on the sugar syrup. I think Ian has just asked another question. Ian?
Thanks, Shannon. I guess maybe it's there was a question during my presentation about a combined heat map, and I was just I think the intention behind those varroa mite heat maps was to provide them in a the same format so they could be used together. Is there any inclination from the state governments to put those together, or are they happy just keeping it all separate? Because I think it is quite useful to have them all stitched together in terms of looking at the spread.
I'm not 100% sure. I don't think it's on the cards at the moment to put them all together. There are some states, I will say WA, which is a little bit behind and is still getting it together. And it's coming to the end, the T2M, towards February. So I think the life of the maps is still being decided. It is another really good reason to promote beekeepers to report their washes, their results, negative or positive, because that is further argument for the use of the maps. So if they're not getting used, it's going to be hard to argue for additional funding. I'll just see. Joe has provided the email address in the chat for any follow-up questions you might have. And then we've got a long question here in the chat from Bianca. What is the relative costs associated with a season of hoverfly production and use for pollination services versus managed honeybee pollination services for the season? And additionally, is there any studies to support any relative difference in yield of crop between hoverflies and honeybees? Ashley, do you have something for that one?
Yes, I can try and answer both. So at the moment, the current cost of production with hoverflies for us at BJO and TPS is fairly well on par with our cost of running our bees. For us moving forward, we do want to get that cost down, especially when it comes to making them a commercial option. So at the moment, the process is quite labour intensive, which makes sense because it's still in research. So that will be the primary aim for the next 5 years with the Hort Innovation Australia project, is to really look at trying to make it as efficient as possible to get those costs down and to make it commercially viable. So that's a big one for us moving forward. When it comes to the studies, yes, everything we have done has been underpinned by the research going into it. So any new crop type we go into, whether it's carrot and brassica for veg seed, whether it's the cherries, berries, moving forward, apples and pears, a lot of research goes into looking at how they compare with honeybees, but also how they work alongside honeybees as well. Our aim is not to replace the honeybees with this, it's to make sure that we've got something that will really complement each other so that we can move forward with a more reliable system. One of the slides that I showed earlier, that will actually have some results on there from the studies that we have done. But otherwise, Hort Innovation Australia or the contact there with Dr. Cameron Spur would probably be the best way to get some of that information on what we have done so far.
Thanks, Ashley. So there's also just the links posted in the chat about all the heat maps for all the states that are available. And we actually have time for about one more question. No, well, I think we'll leave it there then, but please feel free to email through anything that comes up to the varroa.t2m@dpi.newsouthwales.gov.au. Oh, you're welcome. Assassin's just said thanks for the presentations. All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you everyone for your time today and for joining us. I hope you found it helpful. All the best.